Welcome back to Speak Out with Christine Jurgen. I am your host, Christine Jurgen, and I am fresh back to Colorado from the March for Life. By the time this episode comes out, it will be almost 2 weeks after the March for Life, and it was absolutely incredible. We had probably 100,000, if not more, people marching for life. And it's funny because, they say it's just a bunch of old white men, and I saw young people, old people, middle-aged people, bunch of different races. I saw Black people, white people, Asian people, Hispanic people, you name it, they were there. Disabled people, able-bodied people, everyone under the sun. It was so incredible and so beautiful to witness, especially being the 50th March for Life and right after Roe was overturned. So the first march after Roe was overturned, Students for Life showed up in a big way. We had tons of students, and the National Pro-Life Summit was a success. I think we had about 2,500 students who were there on fire for equipping themselves to be able to be involved in the pro-life movement. And if you're watching on YouTube, sorry for everybody on Apple and Spotify right now, I have a Students for Life sweatshirt on. It says Roe is reversed, or Roe reversed. And it's kind of a mock of the New York Times. Obviously, we can't copy and paste New York Times on here, but Students for Life did their SFLA Times, and it looks like a newspaper. You guys can use my code Christine20 for anything off our merch store, or for 20% off of anything in our merch store. Anyway, I will jump into today's episode. Today, our guest is Kendall Bailey. She is a content creator and a Newsmax panelist. She is the head of content strategy at American Faith Media, and she has the funnest Instagram. I mean, she is sassy and she's quick-witted, and I love her for it, but she is not afraid to share her beliefs. Interestingly enough, I found her because of a pro-life post that she made regarding her daughter. When she was pregnant, she faced a really heavy situation and was diagnosed with cancer while being pregnant. And I cannot imagine what that feels like. I cannot imagine what she went through. And I am here to let her share her story. Again, this episode is not medical advice. I am not a doctor. Kendall is not a doctor. We're just sharing her story and sharing a little bit of what her experience was like of walking through that circumstance of saying, hey, you're pregnant, but also you have cancer. So without further ado, we will go ahead and get started. Kendall, thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to have you here. I think I found you because you tagged me in a reel that really moved me. And I want you to share with my audience a little bit about that reel and your story. You have a very powerful story regarding your pregnancy with your daughter. Dive into that a little bit for us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Christine. Yeah, so it started with I was just not hearing well. I went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and there I was diagnosed with otosclerosis, which is progressive deafness. And just for the pure chance that I was at an ear, nose, and throat doctor, he checked my thyroid. That's when we found out that I had thyroid cancer. So I scheduled an appointment to have a full thyroidectomy. And the night before my surgery.
Hey, wait, before, just for any of us who don't know what a thyroidectomy is, Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes. So I had thyroid cancer, and a full thyroidectomy would actually remove my entire thyroid. And then I would be on a supplement to then supplement the lack of my thyroid.
Okay. Got it.
Had that procedure done, they ended up taking a baseball size lump out of my throat. And the only reason I didn't see it was because it was sitting on the back of my spine. And let's see, had that removed, woke up from surgery, and that's when we were told that my cancer had spread. Did I even mention that we found out we were pregnant? Yes, we did. So my anesthesiologist had adjusted the medicine to make sure that I was, safe and that baby was safe from it. Woke up from, a successful surgery, but the cancer spread, and that's when I would need to start radioiodine. Radioiodine is something that will kill cancer. However, if you're pregnant, it will also kill the baby. We had a phenomenal team around us who really encouraged us, kind of saying that my life was just as important as baby's life and vice versa, and we felt the same way. So we chose to postpone my radiation. I carried Presley full term. had her at 9 months. And then I also wanted to breastfeed her too. So, and radiation is something that will attack the breast milk. So I breastfed her for 2 months and then rid myself of breast milk and started radioiodine treatment. So today I am 8 years cancer free and have a beautiful baby girl who's 7 now.
That's amazing. So doctors told you you had cancer, and they said if you didn't have treatment, you could die. And if you did do treatment, your baby would die. And you chose your baby and to postpone treatment. Why?
You know, Christine, it wasn't even an option for us. I feel like it wasn't even something that for me to consider. I felt like I'm a God-fearing woman, and so for me it was easy in the sense that God gave us a baby, and it wasn't my choice to decide whether that baby could live or not. And so in that moment, I mean, as we would do with any of our children, I mean, if this was a life or death situation with my child that it was outside of the womb, I would have made the exact same situation, or I'm sorry, the exact same decision.
So you knew from the moment you found out that you're pregnant, that's a baby, that's my daughter. Well, I guess you maybe didn't know that it was a girl at that time. I'm going to protect her because I'm her mother and that's my duty.
Absolutely. I mean, from the moment that we discovered that we were pregnant, which was, really exciting and then at the same time really scary because we knew that next day I was having surgery. I mean, I had already planned her nursery in my mind. I had we had names picked out for if we had a girl because we had a boy first. She was already a part of our family, so not even a second guess as to if this is something that I would do. So absolutely put my life on the line for my
I
daughter.
imagine there were probably some days that were pretty hard during that. I mean, you're wondering what's going to happen. Can you walk me through maybe some of the emotional days? Because there might be people listening who have been in similar circumstances or may run into similar circumstances. I'm curious. I guess it would be kind of an emotional roller coaster, I could imagine.
I would say it was an emotional roller coaster. In one hand, in the other hand, I felt so covered by his grace and his protection. We had friends and family who really just rallied around us and who were lifting us up in prayer. And on my hardest days, all it took was, reaching down and feeling my stomach and feeling her move and feeling her kicks from when I would turn on different music or feeling her, the slightest movement or her hiccups, just knowing that I was doing the right thing. And again, she had purpose from the moment that God knit her together in my womb. And so truly the best decision that I made. And I'm so
Yeah.
thankful we made that choice.
I feel like that's such an example of A, what Jesus did for us, but B, how mother's love is so unconditional in so many ways. You genuinely laid your life down for her or were willing to make sure that she had life. And I think that's so cool. If you could go back, is there anything that you would change at all?
No, and I mean, people would say, well, wouldn't it have been so much easier to go through the cancer treatment without being pregnant? I will say my mind was so taken off of the cancer because I was pregnant and I just focused solely on that and being the home for that baby for that period of time. And so I really wasn't focused on the cancer. And I've also heard, I'm not sure if this is true, I've heard that being pregnant and the hormones that you're giving off during that can really, help with cancer and kind of subdue some of those
Interesting.
cancer cells.
I didn't know that. I have heard, that's funny that you bring that up. Not funny, but very interesting. Something I read one time is that they are, and I'm probably going to explain this completely wrong because I'm not a doctor, but there are stem cells that the baby can release for the mother. If the mother is injured or has something wrong, that the baby can actually release something to help her. I'm assuming that maybe that's something kind of similar, because I was shocked seeing that babies can, in a roundabout way, kind of, I mean, obviously probably not completely heal their mother, but they do help them.
Absolutely. And I think it's incredible, goes the other way too. So not go off on a completely different tangent, but even with our breast milk, I mean, the fact that
Yeah.
you can take, supposedly if baby is sick, once it latches onto you, the saliva is now telling your body what that baby needs. And then in turn, your milk changes to give that baby, the extra dose of vitamin D or whatever it
Isn't that
is.
cool? I
And
love
it's
breast
just,
milk.
it's incredible.
It's amazing because it's genuinely liquid gold, and it
Yes.
can, they say, do you have pink eye? Or if a kid has pink eye, throw some breast milk in it. Or if they're sick, or if they have a skin condition, put some breast milk in it. Or if your kid is sick, your breast milk changes its makeup to meet the needs of the baby. Or if you're sick, it'll change the makeup of your breast milk to prevent your baby from getting sick or give them antibodies. I think God just totally knew what he was doing. So now, how's your health doing now?
Now I am completely cancer free. I do go
Praise
in
God.
once a year just to have my thyroid checked. And as far as my hearing goes, because the whole reason I went in was because I was losing my hearing, I had 2 surgeries on that, and both of them were unsuccessful. But I now am the proud wearer of hearing aids, and I think we need to bring back how hearing aids can be really cool.
Yeah, I think I've seen that you've worn hearing aids on your Instagram stories. And I have family members who do wearing hearing aids, and I love that you just make it kind of normal. Like, this is just my hearing aid, and you kind of
I
normalize
know.
that.
Well, no other problem. I mean, if someone is unable to see, they wear glasses or they wear contacts, and no one makes it a big deal. And for some reason, I think hearing loss is associated with someone who's elderly, and that's so not the case.
Yeah.
Um, and especially with everything that we have nowadays, with people wearing ear pods all the time, and we're just always plugged in, always connected to noise. I think a lot of people have hearing damage that they're just not aware of.
Yeah. So tell us what you do now. You do a little bit of everything. You are blowing up on social media. You've been exploding, which I think is just incredible. You've got little, I don't know what you would call it, your content creator, commentator, I suppose, and you've got stuff you're just like posting like crazy and on top of it, and you always look good every day. I'm like, oh, she's got kids and she's working and she always looks good. I don't think I've brushed my teeth yet or my hair. How does she look like this? But you just got a new job,
I
correct?
did.
So tell
So
us a little bit about like what you do outside of, motherhood.
okay, well, I will say it was only November of last year. I had maybe, I think it was 1,000 followers on Instagram. And I said, I'm going to continue to post about the corruption that's going on in the government. And if I don't get 5,000 by the end of December, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'll trust that God has a different plan for me. And my Instagram blew up. And a year later, I have 135,000 followers. I am a Turning Point ambassador, but then I'm also doing, I'm a panelist for Newsmax, which has been really fun.
That's
And
amazing.
most recently, I am head of content strategy for American Faith. And so I'm just kind of reporting on all of their stories that they push. And it's been a wild ride because truly I went from being a stay-at-home mom and just loving on my babies, raising my babies, to now, kind of running this brand. And it's
Mhm.
overwhelming. I don't have a team at all right now. And so it's a lot to do, but
You are the team.
I am the team. I am the team, but I love it and I'm passionate about it. I remember growing up, my mom always said she felt like she never worked a day in her life because she always just adored work and it just
Mhm.
happened to pay the bills. And I feel like I'm doing that right now. I feel like I'm getting paid to do something that I adore.
Well, it shows, and you have such a knack for it because you have these like quick one-liners and you're funny. There's a lot of people who commentate on things, and it's the same things that everybody else says. There's a lot of copying in the social media content
Yeah.
creation world, but you have like funny one-liners that you drop in and bring humor to it as well, which I think is so funny. When it comes to being pro-life, you're very vocally pro-life.
Yeah.
Have you always been pro-life?
I've always been pro-life. I grew up in a house where my mom worked on the Reagan administration. My granddad was with the Nixon administration. So a lot of politics in my home. But my mom, when it wasn't like the thing, she was always fighting for pro-life. And so that was just kind of in my bones. And talked about really openly in our home to just, I think abstinence is no longer talked about. And I am someone who I was a virgin until we got married. And that was the biggest blessing, biggest gift that I felt like I could bring to my husband. And I think, I truly think that's where it is for me. I feel like it's something that, it's not like these babies are a surprise. I mean, when you're going into bed with someone, the result is generally a baby.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the choice is made, and that's absolutely where women do have the right to choose, is to lay down in that bed or close your legs or
Not
not.
to. Yeah.
Um, but once that baby is formed, to me, there's just no question that is a life. That life has purpose. That life has value.
Yeah, I think that's cool. What, before I forget, I mean, we're not done yet. I still have a few more questions, but where can people, I have this weird light coming in this room. Where can people find you on social media?
So I am at Kendall underscore in underscore Kentucky.
And Kendall is two L's, correct?
Kendall is two L's. Yes.
Okay. You guys follow her. I think you'll love her.
Thank you.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point as far as abstinence goes. I recently had somebody on who used to teach comprehensive sex ed for 10 years, and she was Planned Parenthood trained, LGBTQ trained, and spoke to like what they're pushing. And they normalize multiple partners at age 10, even like orgies. If you guys haven't listened to that episode, go listen to it. But
What in the world?
yeah, it's bizarre. And they're talking about basically they're going to do it anyway. And so they just need to do it safely, which there's nothing safe about a 10-year-old having sex, period. So I think abstinence does need to be pushed. And I think abstinence, as someone who learned the hard way and became pregnant out of wedlock and had to really walk out those beliefs of mine, like, yes, I'm pro-life, but now I'm really being put to the test, because would it be easier to have an abortion at 20 years old and you're not married? Absolutely. Is that what I should do? No, but I made my bed. I have to lay in it, kind of thing. And we don't push abstinence. I mean, I do, and Students for Life talks about it, but as a whole, society doesn't push abstinence anymore, which is very frustrating, because that is the only way that you can 100% not become pregnant.
Absolutely.
Anything else, whether it's the birth control pill, whether it's a condom or anything else, you're still risking becoming pregnant. And we know what makes a baby. So it's so ridiculous to say that there's anything called safe sex, because there's always the opportunity to become pregnant, because those contraceptive methods do fail.
Well, and my question is, why are we not holding our youth to a higher standard? When you say,
Exactly.
well, they're going to have sex. Well, there's a lot of things that we teach our children not to do. And in those situations, we trust that they're not going to do them. We trust that our children are going to, play make-believe when they're little, and they can play Superman. But when my child climbs on the roof and goes to jump off, I stop them. And then my child knows I don't jump off the roof. And in my household growing up, I just knew that you don't have sex until you're married. And my parents set that precedent, and I just believed that. And I think we're teaching it the wrong way. I think for right now, it seems like it's not the cool thing to do to, not have sex. But I don't think we talk about the repercussions of having sex. And I'm not talking about babies. I'm talking about the emotion that goes into it and how much heartache goes into it.
Yep. There's genuinely a chemical that's released when you have sex with somebody else and you create this bond with them. Whether you think you do or you don't, you create a bond with them. And then oftentimes you end up regretting it later. Maybe you become married to somebody else and then you have this past and you wish you didn't. And I think that's something to think about, not to mention the other things that can come from it, STDs or, something along those lines. It's definitely, there's nothing safe about it. And that is something that God designed to be within a marriage, and why he designed family the way he does. I say that all the time. God designed family so intentionally. And when you have sex with your husband, you oftentimes are okay if you have a baby. I mean, obviously in your circumstances, cancer posed a different risk. And so that was a totally different element that was thrown into the mix. But usually if you accidentally become pregnant, I'm sure if you became pregnant right now, or if I became pregnant right now, we're married, we're with our husband. It's not that big of a deal. So I think that's, in large part, it's such a logical way of thinking, even though, it's biblical, but also logical. And you have also talked a little bit about showing up at your kids' school and being involved. This is something you were talking about, comprehensive sex ed a little bit, and abstinence, and staying involved with your kids' school to know what's going on, so that this stuff isn't pushed. I know you can opt your kids out of comprehensive sex ed, but there's also a lot of other crazy things that are going into schools right now. Tell us a little bit how you get involved in your school and what you do to stay aware for anybody who might need some inspiration to do the same.
I often find my followers telling me, what can I do? I don't have the following that you have. I just don't have a voice. Everyone has a voice. And a lot of people think that they don't have the time, which I get. You have working parents. I would suggest starting out very minimally. If you are going into your child's school and making copies for the teachers, that's such a small way, and it's such a small commitment. I mean, 30 minutes a week, 30 minutes a month, go in there and make copies. Not only are you getting to know the other teachers, but you're reading what those copies are saying. What are they handing out to your students that maybe your children are doing at school, but they're not bringing home, so you don't have the opportunity to read at home. Going on any of the field trips, anytime that you can be, I mean, truly, even going into the library, sorting books, being someone who serves lunch, just getting involved in the lives of these students. And then you're really getting to know the teachers as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important because it doesn't matter what type of school you're in. I know a lot of people say, oh, my kids go to a Christian school or my kids go to a conservative school or whatever. And hello, I'm one of these people. My kids go to a school that is very aligned with my beliefs, or so I thought. And we ran into issues with people trying to push stuff onto our children. And I had to rally parents to get it out of there. So it doesn't matter if it's public school, private school, charter school, conservative school, whatever, it can still happen. And what I notice a lot of times is that people are intentionally, we see crazy people with I love abortion or purple hair or the rainbow, or maybe that really kind of sets off our radar and we're like, okay, red flag. Let's just make sure that they're teaching our kids appropriately and not pushing an agenda, political agenda. But I noticed too, there's people who look very normal, like you and me, or like the average person you'd see at the grocery store, and they're coming into these schools under the radar and then trying to push an agenda. Specifically, I had this happen with my son, and he came home and said that so-and-so said this to me about my skin color and that I'm a victim, and all of the things that leftists typically will push. But that's everywhere now. They're really trying to infiltrate schools. Kendall, back to your circumstance, there was a question that I missed that I did want to ask, because there are women who have been in your same shoes or might be in your same shoes in the future. What would you tell them if they find out that maybe it's not cancer, maybe it's something else that's very serious as well, or maybe it is cancer? What would you tell them if they were in those shoes? And by the way, let's just say this is not a medical advice podcast. This is just her story and her sharing what she thinks from her experience that she went through.
I will say this, abortion is never the solution. I've never heard of a situation where abortion fixes the problem. I had cancer, and if I had an abortion, that would not have fixed my cancer. That would not have cured my cancer. I think so often people think, well, that would be the fix. No, so often find a doctor who is willing to do whatever it takes to save both of you. So it's one thing to go forward with my thyroidectomy, and then if that had killed my baby, that's one thing. That's not me having an abortion. That's me doing what I can do to get to those steps. So I think finding a doctor who is going to do the life-saving measures for your life and for your babies. And again, I think prayer is a really powerful thing. I know not all people believe that, but I do think prayer is a powerful thing. And surrounding yourself with people who believe that both lives matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you had a team around you like that. Were the doctors automatically just mom and baby focused, or did they put abortion out there as an option?
I mean, I think legally he felt like he needed to kind of cover his bases and tell me everything, but he felt like, I think both of your lives are important. I mean, this was a doctor. I've got to give him a shout out because he's in Colorado, Alpine Ear, Nose, and Throat. His name is Dr. Robertson, and I actually still keep in touch with him. He laid hands on me, Christine, and prayed over me before he performed my surgery. I mean, such an incredible man. And I think there are doctors out there who aren't necessarily God-fearing, and yet they still believe that both lives are valuable.
Absolutely. And that's genuinely, doctors are supposed to do no harm. I mean, right. They take an oath. And so when you believe that, then abortion is actually harming a baby. Kendall, if you could give one piece of advice to those listening, you're so bold on social media, right? You say everything and more about what you believe, and people are so inspired about it. If you could give people one piece of advice to speak up about being pro-life or about their beliefs or about what's going on in their kids' school, what would that one piece of advice be?
That's so heavy. What would the one piece of advice be? Here's my thing. I think when it comes to schooling, I think your children, whether they're, like you said, whether they're in a private school or a public school, they're going to be exposed to so much. Even if they're in an incredible environment, they're going to be exposed by the students. Let me take that back. The students will not expose them. They will be exposed to their beliefs. And I think it really starts around the table, around the dinner table. My advice for a family and building a family would be have dinner together as frequently as possible and create an environment where any question is answered. But it just needs to be in an age-appropriate way. I mean, we talk very openly, and I'm sure you do, about politics at our home, as well as sex and abortion. So these are things, just educating our youth about these things and creating a safe space for them.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think kids need to know these things because if they don't hear them from mom and dad, they're going to hear them from somebody else. And it might not be what mom and dad want them to know. So we have to take the initiative and go on offense and be telling our kids, hey, this is what we believe, and being an example to them. This is how you stand up for your beliefs, and this is how you say no to what's wrong. I know that was something that I struggled with. I was very silent about my beliefs for a long time because, as you know, you were here in Colorado for a period of time. It's very liberal, and all of our friends were very liberal and very pro-abortion. And I had beliefs that I held very dearly, but I was kind of scared to talk about them because I wanted other people to feel comfortable. And I didn't want to ruffle their feathers. I didn't want them to dislike me. I didn't want them to disown me as a friend. Ultimately, they ended up doing that after this all came out that I was pro-life and kind of made it my career. But I think it's important. I thought at one point in time, how can I expect my kids to stand up for their beliefs if I'm not doing it myself? So I think it's so important for us to set that example and allow our kids the opportunity to come to us and talk to us. Kendall, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure. One more time where your handle is so people can know where to go follow you.
I'm at Kendall_in_Kentucky, and Kendall is 2 L's.
You guys seriously go follow her. You're going to love her. She's amazing. And you post a little bit of everything. It's
a little bit of everything.
You talk about politics, but then you talk about, clothing or makeup or your skincare routine. So you're kind of all over the place, which I love because there's not just one thing that I'm interested in, and you kind of cover all of it. So thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.